You will never be disrespected again after you do this. Stoic Philosophy Explained. Someone ignores you. Someone interrupts you in front of everyone. Someone speaks to you as if your feelings, your effort, your existence meant nothing. And you carry that moment for hours, sometimes for days. You replay the scene in your head. You imagine what you should have said. You feel anger rising, then shame, then something even heavier. The feeling that perhaps they saw something true about you, something small, something weak, something unworthy. That is why disrespect hurts so much. Not because of the words, because of what the words awaken inside you. Most people spend their lives trying to protect themselves from the next insult, the next rejection, the next moment of humiliation. They think the solution is to become colder, harder, more intimidating. They think peace will come when the world finally treats them with respect. But the world will never make that promise. There will always be people who misunderstand you, people who judge you without knowing you, people who speak from envy, bitterness, ignorance, or pain. If your peace depends on their behavior, then your peace will never be yours. The Stoics understood something that most people never learn. You do not suffer because other people disrespect you. You suffer because somewhere inside you, you have allowed their opinion to become more important than your own. That is the invisible prison, the need to be approved, the need to be seen, the need to make other people confirm that you matter. And the more you need that, the more power they have over you. But there is a way out. Not by changing other people, by changing the place inside yourself where their words still have permission to enter. Because the moment you stop asking the world to tell you who you are, something extraordinary happens. You become impossible to control. The real reason you suffer after being disrespected, the greatest lie you have ever been taught, is that other people are responsible for the way you feel. You believe you suffer because of what they said, because they ignored you, because they looked at you with contempt, because they spoke to you as if you were beneath them. And in that moment it feels true. The insult feels powerful. Their words seem to enter you like a knife. You replay the scene again and again. You imagine what you should have said. You feel anger, then shame, then the exhausting desire to prove yourself. But stop for a moment and ask yourself a difficult question. If disrespect alone were the cause of suffering, why do two people react so differently to the same situation? One person is criticized and continues with their day. Another spends weeks thinking about it. One person is rejected and remains calm. Another feels destroyed. One person is insulted and sees it as nothing more than another person's bitterness. Another takes it as proof that they are weak, unwanted, insignificant. The event is the same. The pain is not. That means the real source of suffering is not outside you. It is inside the meaning you attach to what happened. Between the event and the emotion, there is always an interpretation. Someone interrupts you in a meeting. Immediately, your mind says, "They do not respect me." Someone does not answer your message. Your mind says, "I am not important." Someone criticizes you. Your mind says, "There is something wrong with me." And without realizing it, you are no longer reacting to reality. You are reacting to the story your mind created about reality. That is why the Stoics insisted that the mind must be trained before life becomes difficult. Because if your mind is untrained, every insult becomes a wound. Every rejection becomes a verdict. Every moment of disrespect becomes a mirror reflecting your deepest fears. Epictetus understood this better than anyone. In the Enchiridion of Epictetus, chapter 5, he wrote that men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Read that again, because hidden inside those words is the beginning of your freedom. You are not suffering because someone spoke to you with disrespect. You are suffering because you decided, perhaps without even noticing, that their behavior meant something about your value. You believed them. You took another person's ignorance, anger, insecurity, envy, or cruelty, and turned it into a judgment against yourself. This is what makes disrespect so dangerous. Not because of what other people do, but because of what you do next. The insult enters your life for 1 second. Then you keep it alive. You carry it home. You replay it in silence. You repeat it in your mind until it becomes part of the way you see yourself. A person calls you weak, and days later, you are still asking yourself if they were right. A person rejects you, and suddenly you begin to doubt your worth. A person dismisses you, and now you feel the need to prove yourself to everyone. Do you see what is happening? Their words ended long ago, but you continue the attack from inside your own mind. This is why some people spend years suffering because of a moment that lasted only a few seconds. Not because the moment was so powerful, but because they never stopped feeding it. Marcus Aurelius warned himself about this constantly. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 4, Paragraph 7, he reminded himself that if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Your estimate, your interpretation, your decision to believe that another person's opinion has the authority to define you. But why are you so vulnerable to it? Because most people carry an invisible wound long before anyone disrespects them. The fear of not being enough, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of being unseen, the fear that maybe, deep down, they do not deserve to be valued unless someone else gives them permission. So when a person insults you, they do not create that wound. They touch the wound that was already there. That is why the pain feels so intense. You are not only reacting to what happened today, you are reacting to every moment in your life when you felt rejected, humiliated, ignored, or unloved. The insult is small. The wound beneath it is old. And because the wound is old, you keep looking outside yourself for the solution. You think, if people respected me more, I would finally feel at peace. No. You would only become more dependent, because then your peace would still belong to other people. The Stoic path is harder, but it is also the only path that leads to freedom. It asks you to stop chasing a world where no one ever disrespects you. That world does not exist. Instead, it asks you to build a mind that no longer collapses every time someone does. The moment you understand that your suffering comes not from what happened, but from the meaning you gave it, everything changes. Because if you created the meaning, you can question it. If you can question it, you can change it. And if you can change it, then no person on earth has the power to destroy your peace unless you give them permission. But there is still a deeper truth you have not seen yet. You have been giving that permission away for years without realizing it. The secret contract. You never realized you signed. For most of your life, you have been living by a contract you never consciously agreed to. Nobody sat you down and explained it. Nobody asked you to sign it. Yet it has governed the way you see yourself for years. The contract says this: if people respect me, then I matter. If they admire me, then I am enough. If they approve of me, then I have value. And because of that, every conversation becomes a test. Every disagreement becomes a threat. Every cold look, every delayed message, every moment of rejection feels heavier than it should. Because you are no longer simply experiencing another person's behavior. You are measuring your worth through it. That is why you suffer so deeply when someone disrespects you. Not because they took something real from you, but because they violated the invisible agreement you had with the world. You expected people to confirm that you are valuable, and when they did not, you felt robbed. But think about how dangerous that is. You are placing your peace in the hands of people who do not know you, do not understand you, and often do not even understand themselves. You allow a stranger's opinion to outweigh your own. You allow one careless sentence to speak louder than years of effort, discipline, character, and truth. Why? Because somewhere inside you, there is still a child waiting for permission to feel worthy. A child who learned very early that love had to be earned. Perhaps you were praised only when you succeeded. Perhaps you were noticed only when you pleased others. Perhaps you learned that being accepted meant becoming what other people wanted you to be. So you adapted. You became more agreeable, more careful, more eager to avoid conflict. You learned to read people's faces, to fear their disapproval, to shape yourself according to what would keep you accepted. And without realizing it, you made a silent promise. I will become whatever they need me to be, as long as they make me feel like I matter. This is the contract, and it follows you into adulthood. You enter a room and immediately wonder if people like you. You speak and then question whether you sounded intelligent enough. You set a boundary and then feel guilty for it. You are disrespected, and instead of asking, "What does this say about them?" you ask, "What is wrong with me?" That question has stolen years of your life. Because there is nothing wrong with you. What is wrong is the contract. You were never supposed to build your identity on the unstable opinions of unstable people. You were never meant to spend your life begging the world to tell you who you are. The world is inconsistent. One day it praises you. The next day it ignores you. One person admires you. Another criticizes you. One crowd celebrates you. Another crowd turns against you. If your value rises and falls with those voices, then you will never know peace. You will spend your entire life exhausted, trying to manage the opinions of people you cannot control. Seneca saw this clearly. In Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, Letter 13, he warned that the man who depends on the approval of others places himself at the mercy of the crowd. At the mercy of the crowd. What a terrible way to live. To wake up each day and allow other people to decide whether you are enough. To feel strong when they praise you and worthless when they do not. To spend your life searching for certainty in a place where certainty does not exist. Because people change. Opinions change. Crowds change. A person who admires you today may resent you tomorrow. A person who insults you today may praise you next year. Human beings are inconsistent because they are ruled by their emotions, their fears, their wounds, their pride. Why would you trust something so unstable to define something as important as your worth? The contract was always impossible to satisfy. No matter how much respect you receive, it is never enough. No matter how much validation you gain, you still fear losing it. Because once your identity depends on external approval, you become terrified of anything that threatens it. That is why even successful people often feel deeply insecure. They may have admiration, status, beauty, money, influence, yet one criticism can still break them. Because they never escaped the contract. They still believe that who they are depends on what other people think. And as long as you believe that, you will remain vulnerable. You will remain easy to hurt, easy to manipulate, easy to control. Because anyone who can make you question your worth can control your emotions. Anyone who can make you desperate for approval can make you betray yourself. The truth is difficult, but it is also liberating. You do not need a single person to confirm your value. Not your family, not your partner, not your friends, not the people who rejected you, not the people who misunderstood you. Their respect is not the source of your worth. It never was. The moment you stop asking the world for permission to matter, the contract begins to break. And when that contract breaks, something unexpected happens. The people who once had power over your emotions begin to lose it, because you no longer need anything from them. Why the search for respect makes you easy to control. The moment you need something from other people, you give them power over you. If you need them to admire you, they can manipulate you with praise. If you need them to accept you, they can manipulate you with rejection. If you need them to respect you in order to feel valuable, then they do not even need to touch you to control you. A look is enough. A word is enough. Silence is enough. This is why the search for respect becomes a trap. You believe you are chasing dignity, but what you are really chasing is emotional dependence. And dependence always becomes slavery. Think about how many choices you have made. Not because they were true to you, but because you hoped they would make other people think well of you. You stayed quiet when you wanted to speak. You laughed when something hurt you. You explained yourself to people who had already decided not to understand you. You tried to be more useful, more attractive, more agreeable, more impressive, not because you truly wanted to become those things, but because you believed that if you could just earn enough approval, you would finally feel at peace. But peace never came. Because every time you received respect from others, it only lasted for a moment. Then the fear returned. What if they stop admiring me? What if they reject me? What if they see who I really am? This is the hidden cruelty of seeking validation. It never satisfies you. It only makes you more dependent on the next sign of approval. A thirsty man who drinks salt water does not quench his thirst. He becomes thirstier. That is exactly what happens when you build your self-worth on other people's opinions. The more approval you receive, the more you need. The more respect you gain, the more afraid you become of losing it. And soon, without realizing it, your entire life becomes a performance. You stop asking yourself, what do I believe is right? You start asking, what will make them like me? You stop asking, what kind of person do I want to become? You start asking, how do I avoid criticism? You stop living from your own center and begin orbiting around the expectations of everyone else. This is why so many people feel exhausted without understanding why. Because they are not living. They are managing impressions. They are constantly adjusting themselves to avoid being judged. They measure every word, every action, every decision according to how it will be received. And the tragic part is that even after all that effort, they still do not feel respected. Because the person they are presenting to the world is not real. It is a version of themselves designed to gain approval. Deep down, they know it. And because they know it, the approval never feels genuine. You cannot feel truly respected when you are being loved for a mask. Marcus Aurelius understood this danger. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 6, paragraph 30, he warned himself not to become Caesarized, not to be stained by the need to impress, flatter, or gain the approval of others. Even as emperor, with all the power and admiration in the world, he knew how easy it was to lose yourself in the opinions of other people. Because the crowd is never satisfied. If you are strong, someone will call you cold. If you are kind, someone will call you weak. If you are confident, someone will call you arrogant. If you are quiet, someone will say you have nothing to offer. No matter what you do, someone will misunderstand you. So why would you sacrifice your peace trying to control something impossible? The person who needs to be respected becomes easy to manipulate because they can always be threatened. Threatened with rejection, threatened with criticism, threatened with being ignored. And when you are afraid of those things, you stop acting from principle and start acting from fear. You become easier to pressure, easier to silence, easier to guilt, easier to use. How many times have you tolerated disrespect because you were afraid to lose someone's approval? How many times have you remained in relationships, jobs, friendships, situations that were destroying you, simply because you could not bear the thought of being judged, abandoned, or misunderstood? That is not loyalty. That is fear wearing the mask of love. The people who control you are not always the strongest people in your life. They are simply the people whose opinion you are most afraid to lose. And once someone discovers that, they do not need to force you. You will control yourself for them. You will shrink yourself to keep them comfortable. You will silence your truth to avoid their anger. You will betray your own values because their approval has become more important than your self-respect. This is how people lose themselves. Not all at once. One compromise at a time. One silence at a time. One desperate attempt to be accepted at a time. Until one day they wake up and realize they have spent years building a life that does not even belong to them. The Stoics offered a different path, a harder path, a freer path. They taught that the only respect worth having is the respect you earn from your own conscience. Because when you can look at yourself and know that you acted with courage, honesty, discipline, and self-respect, something changes. You no longer need the crowd. You no longer need applause. You no longer need everyone to understand you. And that is the moment other people lose the power to control you. But before you can become free, you must see the painful truth of what this dependence has already cost you. The moment you start betraying yourself. No one loses themselves in a single day. You do not wake up one morning and suddenly become weak, silent, dependent on the opinions of others. It happens slowly. So slowly that you barely notice it. At first it seems harmless. You stay quiet to avoid an argument. You agree with something you do not believe because you do not want people to be upset with you. You laugh at a joke that hurts you because you do not want to seem sensitive. You tell yourself it is not important. You tell yourself you are being mature. You tell yourself you are keeping the peace. But each time you do that, something inside you shifts. You begin to learn that your real thoughts are dangerous. Your real feelings are inconvenient. Your real self is too much, too difficult, too easy to reject. So you start editing yourself. You become more agreeable than you truly are, more patient than you truly feel, more available, more forgiving, more understanding. Not because it is virtuous, but because you are afraid. Afraid that if people see who you really are, they will leave. Afraid that if you speak honestly, they will judge you. Afraid that if you stop pleasing everyone, no one will choose you. This is the moment you begin to betray yourself, not when someone else disrespects you, when you start abandoning your own truth in exchange for acceptance. You know this feeling. Someone says something that crosses a line. You feel it immediately. Your body knows. Your mind knows. A part of you wants to speak, but you do not, because you are afraid of what will happen if you do. So you smile, you stay quiet, you act as if it did not matter. Then you go home and think about it for hours. You imagine the words you should have said. You feel anger, not only toward them, but toward yourself. Because deep down, you know the real wound was not what they did. The real wound was that you abandoned yourself in the moment you needed yourself most. This is why so many people feel disrespected over and over again. Because they are sending the world a message without realizing it. They are teaching people that they will tolerate what violates them. Not because they are weak, but because they are disconnected from their own worth. A person who does not believe they deserve respect will accept what should never be accepted. They will over-explain to people who have no intention of understanding. They will keep giving chances to those who keep crossing the same line. They will stay in places where they are constantly diminished, hoping that if they are patient enough, useful enough, loving enough, things will finally change. But they rarely do, because when you abandon your own standards, the world follows your example. If you treat your own feelings as unimportant, others will too. If you silence your own truth, others will speak over it. If you act as though your value is negotiable, you will attract people who are eager to negotiate it. Seneca wrote in Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, letter 28, that he who is everywhere is nowhere. He was speaking about the danger of living without an inner center, without principles that guide you no matter who stands in front of you. Because if you become a different person for every room, every relationship, every opinion, then who are you when you are alone? This is the hidden price of trying to be accepted by everyone. You slowly disappear. You stop making decisions based on what is right and start making them based on what is safe. You stop asking, what do I believe? You start asking, what will upset the fewest people? And little by little your life becomes a prison built from compromises. You tolerate what exhausts you. You remain where you are not valued. You continue explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You become loyal to people who are not loyal to you. And then you wonder why you feel empty. Because the soul cannot feel peace when it is constantly betraying itself. There is no amount of approval that can heal the pain of abandoning your own truth. You can be admired by everyone and still feel miserable if, deep down, you know you are not being honest with yourself. Marcus Aurelius understood this. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 8, Paragraph 5, he reminded himself to remain simple, good, pure, serious, free from affectation. He knew that the greatest danger was not criticism from others, but losing himself while trying to avoid it. That is the tragedy. Most people are not destroyed by the cruelty of others. They are destroyed by the years they spend pretending to be someone else in order to survive it. The Stoic path asks something difficult from you. It asks you to stop negotiating with your own conscience, to stop apologizing for what is true, to stop abandoning yourself every time you fear rejection, because the more you betray yourself, the more you need other people to tell you who you are. But the more loyal you become to your own values, the less power other people's opinions have over you. This does not mean becoming cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It means becoming rooted. It means learning to say, this is what I believe. This is what I deserve. This is what I will no longer tolerate. Not because you want to control others, because you are finally learning not to abandon yourself. And when you stop abandoning yourself, something remarkable begins to happen. You no longer need the world to constantly prove that you matter. You begin to carry your dignity from within. The Stoic definition of dignity. Most people spend their entire lives chasing something they do not even understand. They say they want respect. They say they want confidence. They say they want to feel important. But what they are really searching for is dignity. The problem is that almost everyone has been taught the wrong definition of it. You have been taught that dignity comes from being admired, from being successful, from being seen as intelligent, attractive, powerful, desired. You have been taught that if enough people approve of you, then you will finally stand taller, finally feel worthy, finally feel at peace. But if dignity could be given by other people, then it could also be taken away by them. And anything that can be taken away is not dignity. It is dependence. Real dignity is quieter than that. It does not shout. It does not need to prove itself. It does not become stronger when praised or weaker when criticized. The Stoics believed that dignity comes from one thing only: living in agreement with your own principles. You know you have dignity when you can be misunderstood and still remain honest, when you can be rejected and still remain kind, when you can be insulted and still refuse to become cruel. Because dignity is not what other people think about you, it is what you know about yourself. This is why a person can have status, money, beauty, admiration, and still feel deeply ashamed when they are alone. Because deep down they know they are living for appearances. They know they are constantly acting, constantly performing, constantly changing themselves to fit what other people want. And no amount of applause can silence the pain of knowing that you are betraying yourself. At the same time, another person may have very little. They may not be admired. They may not be understood. They may even be criticized by everyone around them. And yet they sleep peacefully. Why? Because they know who they are. They know that they acted with integrity. They know that they did not sell their values for acceptance. That is dignity. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no wealth, no status, no power. By the standards of the world, he had nothing. And yet few people in history have spoken with greater dignity, because no one could force him to betray his own mind. No one could make him lie to himself. No one could take away his ability to choose how he responded. That is why he said in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 1, Chapter 29, that no man is free who is not master of himself. Think about what that means. The person who is desperate to be admired is not free. The person who changes themselves to avoid criticism is not free. The person who needs everyone to understand them before they can feel at peace is not free. They are living with invisible chains. Chains made of approval. Chains made of fear. Chains made of the exhausting need to be validated. The Stoics wanted something greater. They wanted a dignity that could survive anything. A dignity that could survive failure. A dignity that could survive rejection. A dignity that could survive being mocked, misunderstood, or ignored. Because if your sense of self collapses every time life becomes difficult, then you never truly possessed it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this constantly. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 7, paragraph 67, he wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Your dignity is shaped by what you allow to live inside your mind. If you fill your mind with the opinions of others, your dignity becomes fragile. If you fill your mind with fear, comparison, resentment, and the desperate need to prove yourself, then your peace will always depend on things you cannot control. But if you fill your mind with courage, discipline, honesty, and self-respect, then something changes. You stop needing people to constantly tell you that you matter. You already know, not because you are better than anyone else, because you have become loyal to yourself. This is the difference between pride and dignity. Pride says, I need everyone to see my value. Dignity says, I know my value, even if no one else sees it. Pride is loud because it is insecure. Dignity is quiet because it does not need permission. And perhaps this is the reason you have suffered so much. Not because you lacked worth, but because you spent years looking for your worth in places where it could never be found. You searched for it in praise, in relationships, in approval, in being chosen, and never being criticized. But none of those things were ever capable of giving you what you needed, because what you need cannot come from outside. It must be built, day by day, choice by choice. Every time you tell the truth when it would be easier to pretend. Every time you hold your ground when it would be easier to surrender yourself. Every time you walk away from what diminishes you instead of begging it to change. That is how dignity is built. Not in comfort, in character. And once you begin to build that kind of dignity, you realize something that changes everything. There are a few things in this world that no one can ever take from you. The three things no one can ever take from you. Most of what people spend their lives protecting can be taken away in a moment. Your reputation can be destroyed by a lie. Your money can disappear. Your job can end. Your appearance can change. People who once admired you can forget you. People who once loved you can leave. Even the image you worked so hard to create can collapse overnight. That is why so many people live in fear, because they build their identity on things that are unstable. And anything unstable will eventually betray you. The Stoics saw this clearly. They understood that if you build your peace on things you can lose, then your peace will always be fragile. So they asked a different question. What is left when everything else is taken away? The answer is simple. There are only three things that truly belong to you. Your judgments, your choices, your character. Everything else is outside your control. Your judgments are the way you interpret what happens to you. Two people can live through the same event and leave with completely different lives because they judged the event differently. One person loses a job and says, "My life is over." Another says, "This is painful, but I will adapt." One person is insulted and says, "This proves I am worthless." Another says, "This says more about them than it does about me." The event does not decide who you become. Your judgment does. That is why your mind is the most important thing you possess. Not because you can control everything that happens, but because you can control the meaning you give to what happens. You cannot stop people from criticizing you. You cannot stop life from disappointing you. You cannot stop the world from being unfair. But you can decide whether those things will make you bitter, fearful, weak, resentful, or whether they will make you wiser. This is what no one can take from you. No one can enter your mind and force you to see yourself as worthless. No one can force you to believe their opinion. No one can make you surrender your inner judgment unless you choose to. The second thing no one can take from you is your choices. Life may limit your options. It may corner you. It may put you in situations you never wanted. But even then, there is always one thing that remains free: the choice of how you respond. Viktor Frankl understood this in the darkest possible circumstances. Even in a concentration camp when almost everything had been stripped away, he realized that one freedom still remained: the freedom to choose his attitude. That is why he wrote that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. The Stoics believed the same thing centuries earlier. You may not choose what happens to you, but you always choose what kind of person you become because of it. When someone disrespects you, you have a choice. You can let their words define you. You can spend days trying to prove them wrong. You can become angry, bitter, obsessed, or you can remain centered. You can refuse to carry their ugliness inside you. You can choose to walk away with your peace intact. That choice belongs to you. Always. And the third thing no one can ever take from you is your character. This is the deepest part of you, the part that remains when everything else changes. Character is who you are when no one is watching. It is the decision to remain honest when lying would be easier, to remain calm when anger would be easier, to remain loyal to your values when the world rewards compromise. Character is not built when life is easy. It is revealed when life becomes difficult. Anyone can appear strong when they are praised. Anyone can appear kind when they are comfortable. Anyone can appear confident when everything is going their way. But what happens when you are criticized, rejected, humiliated, ignored? That is when you discover who you really are. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 7, paragraph 56, that if someone despises him, that is their problem. His own concern is not to do or say anything deserving of contempt. What a powerful way to live. To stop asking, how are they treating me? And begin asking, who am I becoming in response to this? Because that is the only question that matters. Other people can take your reputation. They can take opportunities from you. They can speak badly about you, reject you, misunderstand you. But they cannot take your ability to think clearly. They cannot take your freedom to choose your response. They cannot take your character unless you abandon it yourself. This is why the Stoics were so calm in the face of hardship. Not because they believed life would always be kind, because they knew that the most important parts of themselves could never be touched by the world. When you understand this, something inside you becomes stronger. You stop clinging so desperately to things that can disappear. You stop fearing the opinions of people who cannot see your true value. You stop building your identity on praise, status, attention, or acceptance, because you realize that your deepest worth was never located there. It was always inside the way you think, the way you choose, and the kind of person you decide to become. And once you know that, you begin to see life differently. You begin to stop fighting reality itself. The day you stop arguing with reality, one of the deepest causes of suffering is not what happens to you. It is your refusal to accept that it happened. You do not suffer only because someone disrespected you. You suffer because a part of you keeps saying, this should not have happened. You think people should be fair. You think they should understand you. You think they should recognize your effort, your loyalty, your intentions. And when they do not, you feel betrayed by life itself. But reality has never promised you any of those things. Reality does not promise that people will be kind. It does not promise that you will be appreciated. It does not promise that those who hurt you will understand what they have done. The world is full of wounded people, confused people, selfish people, frightened people. Some of them will misunderstand you. Some of them will judge you unfairly. Some of them will project their own bitterness onto you, not because you deserve it, because that is who they are. And the more you insist that they should be different, the more you chain yourself to disappointment. This is the argument you have been having with reality your entire life. You say, people should respect me. Reality says, some people will not. You say, they should understand me. Reality says, some people never will. You say, after everything I did, they should have treated me better. Reality says, many people are not capable of giving what they have never learned to give. You can spend years fighting these truths. You can spend years replaying the past, trying to make it different, trying to understand why someone failed you, trying to force another person to become who you needed them to be. But no matter how much you suffer, reality does not change. The past remains the past. People remain who they are. And life moves forward. The Stoics did not become peaceful because life was easy for them. They became peaceful because they stopped demanding that life obey their preferences. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 8, paragraph 47, that a blazing fire takes whatever is thrown into it and makes it a source of its own heat and brightness. That is what he learned to do, not to waste his life wishing the world were different, to use whatever the world gave him, even injustice, even criticism, even disrespect. Because the moment you stop arguing with reality, you stop giving your energy to a battle you can never win. You begin to see people clearly. You stop expecting loyalty from those who have no loyalty in them. You stop expecting understanding from those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop expecting maturity from people who are ruled by their emotions. And this does not make you cold. It makes you free. Because expectations are often the hidden source of pain. You expected them to love you the way you loved them. You expected them to value what you gave. You expected them to recognize your intentions. When they did not, you felt hurt. But your pain came not only from what they did, it came from the image you had created of who they should have been, and that image was never real. Seneca warned about this in Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, letter 95. He said that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. You imagined that if you were good enough, kind enough, patient enough, people would treat you fairly. You imagined that if you explained yourself clearly enough, they would understand. You imagined that if you gave enough of yourself, They would eventually become what you hoped they would be. But reality does not reward everyone according to your hopes. Reality simply reveals what is there. It reveals who people are. It reveals where you are still attached. It reveals what you still expect from the world. This is painful at first, because there is grief in letting go of illusions. There is grief in realizing that some people will never become who you wanted them to be. There is grief in accepting that life will not always feel fair. But there is also freedom, because once you stop arguing with reality, you stop wasting your life trying to control what cannot be controlled. You stop begging people to become different. You stop carrying the unbearable burden of needing the world to be something it is not. And instead, you begin to ask a different question. Not, why are they like this? But given that they are like this, what is the wisest response? That question changes everything, because it brings you back to the only place where your power truly exists. Not in changing other people, not in forcing life to follow your script, but in deciding who you will be in the face of what is real. This is the day you stop suffering, because life did not meet your expectations. This is the day you begin to live in truth. And once you stop arguing with reality, you become capable of doing something even more powerful. You become capable of looking directly at an insult without allowing it to enter your mind. How to look at an insult? Without letting it enter you. When someone insults you, something happens inside you before you even have time to think. Your body tightens, your chest contracts, your mind races. You feel the urge to react immediately, to defend yourself, to attack back, to explain, to prove that they are wrong. And most people obey that impulse without questioning it. They let the insult enter their mind, spread through their emotions, and become part of them. A stranger says one sentence, and suddenly the entire day is ruined. But the Stoics saw something that most people never notice. An insult is not the same thing as a wound. It only becomes a wound when you allow it to enter you. Imagine that someone walks to the door of your house and begins shouting through it. They insult you. They accuse you. They speak with anger and contempt. Would you invite them inside? Would you open the door, sit them at your table, and let them stay for the rest of the day? Of course not. Yet this is exactly what you do in your mind. Someone says something cruel and you welcome it in. You repeat it to yourself. You carry it with you. You sit with it in silence and let it take over your thoughts. The insult came from them. The suffering continues because of you. Epictetus taught that when something external happens, the first task is not to react, but to examine the impression. In Discourses of Epictetus, Book 2, Chapter 18, he advised himself to say, "You are only an appearance and not the thing you appear to be." That is what you must learn to do with insults. When someone speaks to you with disrespect, do not immediately believe what you feel. Pause. Create a distance between the event and your interpretation. Someone says, "You are weak." Instead of reacting, ask yourself, "Is that true?" Someone says, "You will never be enough." Pause and ask, "Does this person have the authority to decide that?" Someone ignores you. Instead of thinking, "I do not matter," ask, "Why am I turning another person's behavior into a judgment about my worth?" This pause is where your freedom begins. Because if you do not pause, you become a prisoner of your first emotion. And first emotions are often full of fear, pride, insecurity, and old wounds. The mind of an untrained person is like a house with no door. Everything enters, every criticism, every opinion, every careless word. But the Stoic mind has a gate. It does not reject reality. It does not pretend the insult never happened. It simply asks, "Should I allow this inside?" Because not every thought deserves to be believed. Not every opinion deserves to be carried. Not every insult deserves your attention. You must become more selective about what you allow to live in your mind. If a cruel person insults you, why would you trust their judgment? If an angry person attacks you, why would you let their anger become your truth? If a confused person misunderstands you, why would you use their confusion as evidence against yourself? Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 6, paragraph 52, that the best revenge is not to become like the person who injured you. Most people hear that and think it means not to insult them back. But it means something even deeper. Do not become like them in your own mind. Do not let their bitterness make you bitter. Do not let their disrespect make you disrespect yourself. Do not let their chaos become your chaos, because that is what happens when you accept an insult without questioning it. You begin to see yourself through the eyes of the person who hurt you, and there is nothing more dangerous than allowing someone else's darkness to become the way you understand yourself. There will always be people who speak from envy, people who insult you because they feel small, people who try to humiliate you because they cannot face their own pain. You cannot stop them, but you can stop giving them access to your inner world. The next time someone disrespects you, do not ask, "How do I make them regret this?" Ask, "Why am I giving this person the power to decide what I am worth?" That question changes everything, because you begin to realize that the door of your mind belongs to you. You decide what enters. You decide what stays. You decide which voices deserve to matter. And when you stop opening the door to every insult, every criticism, every careless opinion, you begin to experience a kind of peace that most people never know. A peace that does not depend on how people treat you. A peace that comes from knowing that your mind is no longer available to everyone. But there is still something important you must understand. People who disrespect others are often revealing far more about themselves than about you. Why some people need to humiliate others. When someone disrespects you, your first instinct is to believe that their behavior says something about you. You think, maybe I am not enough. Maybe I deserved it. Maybe there is something wrong with me. But most of the time, what people say to you has very little to do with who you are. It has everything to do with who they are. People do not humiliate others because they are strong. They humiliate others because they are weak. A person who is truly secure has no need to make someone else feel small. A person who is at peace does not enjoy causing pain. A person who knows their own worth does not spend their time trying to destroy the worth of others. Only an insecure person needs to stand on someone else's shoulders to feel tall. Only a wounded person needs to make another person bleed in order to forget their own pain. This is difficult to remember when you are the one being insulted. Because when someone speaks to you with contempt, it feels personal. It feels as though they have discovered something shameful about you. But often the insult is not a verdict, it is a confession. The arrogant person is often hiding deep insecurity. The person who constantly criticizes others is often unable to face themselves. The person who humiliates you in front of others is often desperate to feel superior because they secretly feel powerless. Think about it. Why does one person feel the need to mock, control, belittle, interrupt, dismiss? Because somewhere inside them there is fear. Fear of being ignored. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing control. And instead of confronting those fears honestly, they project them onto others. They make other people carry the pain they refuse to face. Seneca understood this. In On Anger by Seneca, Book 1, Chapter 14, he wrote that people are often harsh because they themselves are suffering. That does not excuse their behavior. It does not mean you should tolerate abuse. It means you must stop interpreting their cruelty as proof of your own lack of worth. Because if you do not understand this, you will spend your life carrying burdens that do not belong to you. Someone insults you because they are jealous and you begin to doubt yourself. Someone rejects you because they are emotionally immature and you begin to believe you are unlovable. Someone speaks to you with disrespect because they cannot control their own emotions and you begin to feel ashamed. You are carrying their problem as if it were your identity. But not everything that is thrown at you belongs to you. A person covered in mud may try to touch everyone around them. That does not mean you must wear the mud yourself. The Stoics believe that before reacting to another person's behavior, you should ask one question. What kind of pain must this person be carrying to behave this way? Again, this is not weakness. This is clarity. Because when you see another person's insult as an expression of their own confusion, fear, or bitterness, something inside you changes. You stop taking everything so personally. You stop seeing yourself as the target. You begin to see that you were simply standing in front of a person who is at war with themselves. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 2, Paragraph 1. He wrote that when you wake up, you should expect to meet people who are intrusive, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and selfish because they do not know good from evil. He did not say this to become cynical. He said it so that he would not be surprised. So that he would not waste his peace expecting wounded people to act as though they were healed. This is one of the hardest lessons in life. You want people to behave according to your heart. You want them to be as honest as you are, as loyal, as thoughtful, as kind. But many people have not done the inner work that you are trying to do. Many people are ruled by impulse, insecurity, ego, resentment. If you expect them to act differently, you will keep suffering. Not because they are hurting you, because you are asking reality to become something it is not. And there is another truth hidden inside this. The people who try hardest to humiliate others often choose those who already doubt themselves. They can sense insecurity. They can sense who is desperate to be liked, desperate to be accepted, desperate to avoid conflict. That is why inner dignity matters so much. Because the moment you stop questioning your own worth, their insults lose their power. The moment you no longer need everyone to approve of you, manipulation becomes impossible. The moment you stop taking another person's pain personally, you become free. You begin to understand that you do not have to fight every insult. You do not have to defend yourself against every opinion. You do not have to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Some people are speaking from wounds that have nothing to do with you, and the wisest thing you can do is refuse to let their pain become your prison. Still, understanding this is not enough. There will be moments when your emotions demand that you react. Moments when your pride wants revenge. Moments when every part of you wants to prove yourself. And that is where the real test begins. The courage to remain unmoved. When someone disrespects you, there is a part of you that immediately wants to fight. You want to answer. You want to defend yourself. You want to make them regret what they said. You imagine the perfect response hours later. The words that would have silenced them. The sentence that would have put them in their place. And because you did not say it, you begin to feel weak. You tell yourself that staying calm means you lost. That silence means submission. That if you do not react, they win. But this is one of the greatest illusions your pride will ever create. Not every reaction is strength. Very often, reacting is exactly what proves that they still control you. If someone can disturb your peace with a single word, then they are not fighting you. They are directing you. The person who angers you controls you. The person who can make you desperate to defend yourself is already standing inside your mind. This is why the Stoics believe that true strength is not found in domination, revenge, or intimidation. True strength is the ability to remain anchored when everything inside you wants to lose control. That kind of strength is rare. Anyone can shout. Anyone can insult. Anyone can explode when they are hurt. It takes no discipline to follow an impulse. It takes no wisdom to obey your anger. The difficult thing is to feel the fire inside you and still refuse to let it decide who you are. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 11, Paragraph 18, that the best way to defend yourself from wrongdoers is not to become like them. Again, this does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean allowing people to mistreat you without limits. There are moments when you must speak. Moments when you must walk away. Moments when you must set a boundary with clarity and firmness. But there is a difference between acting from principle and reacting from wounded pride. One comes from strength, the other comes from fear. A person acting from principle says, "This behavior is unacceptable, and I will not remain where I am not respected." A person reacting from pride says, "I need to make them feel what I feel. I need to prove that I am not weak." The first person is free. The second is still trapped, because they are still depending on the other person's reaction in order to feel powerful. They still need to win. They still need to be seen as right. They still need the other person to recognize their value. But what if you no longer needed that? What if your peace no longer depended on being understood? What if you could leave an argument without feeling defeated? What if you could be misunderstood and still remain certain of who you are? That is courage. The courage to remain unmoved is not the absence of emotion. It is the refusal to let emotion govern you. You still feel anger. You still feel hurt. You still feel disappointment. But you do not kneel before those feelings. You do not let them drag you into becoming someone you do not respect. Because there is a hidden danger in every moment of emotional reaction. The danger is not only that you lose control. The danger is that you lose yourself. How many times have you said things you regretted because you wanted to hurt someone back? How many times have you betrayed your own values because your pride demanded revenge? How many times have you become exactly the kind of person you dislike, simply because someone else provoked you? That is the price of being ruled by emotion. You hand other people the power to decide who you become. A disrespectful person insults you, and now you become disrespectful. An angry person loses control, and now you lose control. A cruel person wounds you, and now you begin wounding others. Without realizing it, you become a mirror of the very thing that hurt you. The Stoics refused to live that way. They believed that no person should have the power to pull you away from your own principles, not because your principles are convenient, because they are the only thing that keeps you free. Epictetus said in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 1, Chapter 25, that no one can harm you unless you allow them to damage your character. Think about that. Perhaps the greatest victory is not proving yourself. Perhaps the greatest victory is remaining faithful to yourself, remaining calm when others are chaotic, remaining dignified when others are petty, remaining disciplined when others are ruled by impulse. That is not weakness. That is mastery. And mastery is silent. It does not need applause. It does not need the last word. It does not need revenge in order to feel whole. There is a reason why truly strong people often seem calm. It is not because they do not feel. It is because they have learned that not every battle deserves their energy. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every person deserves access to their peace. The world will try to convince you that power is loud, that strength is aggressive, that if you do not react, you are weak. Do not believe it. There is nothing stronger than a person who can feel everything and still choose what is right. A person who can stand in the middle of disrespect and say, "I will not allow this to change who I am." That is the moment you stop being controlled by the world. But to reach that moment consistently, you need something more than discipline. You need one question that can bring you back to yourself every time life tries to pull you away. The one question that changes everything. There will be moments when your emotions move faster than your wisdom. Moments when someone says something cruel and your chest tightens before you even have time to think. Moments when you feel rejected, dismissed, ignored, humiliated. And in those moments, all your old habits return. You want to explain yourself. You want to prove them wrong. You want to make them understand what they did to you, because a part of you still believes that if they finally saw your value, you would feel at peace. But that peace never lasts, because the real problem was never their opinion. The real problem was that you built your peace on something you could not control. This is why you need one question strong enough to cut through anger, fear, shame, and confusion. One question that can bring you back to reality before your emotions carry you away. The question is this: what here is truly under my control? That question seems simple, but if you ask it honestly, it can change your entire life. Because the moment you ask it, the fog begins to disappear. You begin to separate what belongs to you from what does not. You begin to see that most of the things causing you pain were never yours to carry. Someone disrespects you. Ask yourself, is their opinion under my control? No. Is their behavior under my control? No. Is their mood, their insecurity, their ignorance, their inability to understand me under my control? No. Then why am I giving those things authority over my peace? The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. There are things that belong to you and things that do not. Your thoughts belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your actions belong to you. Your character belongs to you. Everything else does not. This idea is central to Stoic philosophy and to understanding why disrespect has power over you. Things under your control are different. Things outside your control. Most people spend their lives trying to control what they never could. They try to control whether people like them, whether they are understood, whether they are respected, whether the past had happened differently, whether everyone sees them the way they want to be seen. And because they are trying to control the uncontrollable, they remain anxious, angry, exhausted. They are fighting a battle they can never win. But the moment you ask, "What here is truly under my control?" your attention returns to the only place where your power actually exists, not in their opinion, in your response, not in what they said, in what you choose to believe, not in whether they respect you, in whether you respect yourself. Epictetus opened the Enchiridion of Epictetus chapter 1 with this exact truth. He said that some things are up to us, and some things are not. That is where freedom begins. Freedom does not begin when people finally stop hurting you. Freedom begins when you stop demanding that the world become different before you allow yourself to be at peace. Imagine someone criticizes you unfairly. Your old mind says, "I need to make them understand. I need to change their opinion. I need to defend myself." But your new mind asks, "What is under my control?" You cannot control whether they understand. You cannot control whether they continue speaking badly about you. You cannot control whether they choose to see the truth. But you can control whether you become consumed by it. You can control whether you abandon your values trying to change their mind. You can control whether you remain calm, clear, and loyal to yourself. That is your power, and it is enough. Perhaps more than enough, because most of your suffering has come from trying to carry things that were never yours. You carried other people's judgments, other people's expectations, other people's moods, other people's inability to love, understand, or respect you, and all of it made you feel smaller, not because you were weak, because you forgot where your power truly lived. It never lived in another person's approval. It lived in your ability to choose your response. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 12, paragraph 36, that your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought. So ask yourself, what are you holding in thought every day? The opinions of people who do not understand you? The memory of insults that happened years ago? The desperate hope that everyone will finally see your worth? Or are you holding on to what is actually yours? Your values, your choices, your discipline, your ability to remain whole in a world that often is not. The next time someone disrespects you, pause. Do not rush to react. Do not rush to defend yourself. Ask the question, what here is truly under my control? Then let everything else go. Because the things you cannot control have been stealing your peace for too long. And once you stop giving your energy to them, you are ready to live by a completely different standard. The new standard you must live by. For most of your life, you have probably measured yourself by the wrong standard. You measured yourself by whether people liked you, whether they approved of you, whether they stayed, whether they praised you, whether they treated you as if you mattered. And because of that, your sense of worth kept changing. Some days you felt strong because someone admired you. Other days you felt broken because someone ignored you. You lived as if your value were a vote, and every person around you had the right to decide it. But there is no peace in living that way. Because people are inconsistent. They love you when you make them comfortable. They criticize you when you challenge them. They praise you when you become what they want. They reject you when you become who you really are. If you keep using their opinions as the measure of your worth, you will spend your entire life changing shape for people who are not even sure of who they are themselves. That is why you need a new standard, a private standard, a standard that does not rise and fall with praise or criticism, a standard built on things no one can take from you. Ask yourself a different question. Not, do they respect me? Ask, did I act with self-respect? Not, did they understand me? Ask, was I honest? Not, did they approve of me? Ask, did I remain faithful to my values? Because those are the only questions that can give you real peace. The world may never give you the recognition you deserve. People may continue to misunderstand you. Some may leave. Some may judge you unfairly. But if you know that you acted with integrity, then you do not need their permission to sleep peacefully at night. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this constantly. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 6, Paragraph 2, he wrote that, if you do the right thing, the rest does not matter. The rest does not matter. Not because other people are unimportant, because your character is more important. You have spent too much of your life giving strangers the authority to decide whether you are enough. You gave that authority to people who did not see your heart, to people who judged you through their own wounds, to people who only valued you when you were easy to control. But now you must take that authority back. You must become the one who decides what is acceptable, the one who decides what you deserve, the one who decides what kind of life you will live. This means setting a standard that is higher than approval, a standard of discipline, a standard of honesty, a standard of courage, a standard that says, I will not betray myself in order to be accepted. I will not remain where I am constantly diminished. I will not explain my worth to people who are determined not to see it. I will not trade my peace for the temporary comfort of being liked. This is not arrogance. It is self-respect. Arrogance says, I am better than everyone. Self-respect says, I will no longer participate in my own destruction. There is a great difference between those two things. The arrogant person needs to feel superior. The self-respecting person simply refuses to feel inferior. And once you begin to live by this new standard, many things will change. You will stop chasing people who cannot love you. You will stop begging for explanations from those who have already shown you who they are. You will stop wasting your energy trying to convince people to value you, because you will understand something that most people never learn. The people who truly belong in your life will never require you to abandon yourself in order to keep them. The right people do not ask you to shrink. They do not ask you to silence your truth. They do not ask you to earn the basic respect that every human being deserves. And if someone disappears because you finally set a boundary, then they were not losing you. They were losing access to the version of you that tolerated everything. That is not a loss. That is freedom. Seneca wrote in Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, Letter 71, that the highest good is a mind that despises the accidents of chance and delights in virtue. That is the standard you must live by, not the unstable standard of the crowd, not the standard of social approval, the standard of virtue. Did you remain honest? Did you remain disciplined? Did you remain loyal to yourself? If the answer is yes, then you have already won, even if nobody applauds you. Because peace was never meant to come from being admired. Peace comes from being aligned with your conscience, aligned with your values, aligned with the person you know you are capable of becoming. And when you begin to live this way, something remarkable happens. You stop needing the world to tell you who you are. You already know. You become untouchable. The moment. You stop needing permission. There will always be people who do not understand you. People who judge you without knowing your story. People who speak to you from envy, anger, insecurity, or pain. There will always be moments when you are ignored. Moments when you are rejected. Moments when you are treated unfairly. You cannot stop that. You cannot control what lives in the hearts of other people. You cannot force them to be wiser, kinder, more mature than they are. For so much of your life, you believed that peace would come when the world finally changed, when people respected you, when they recognized your worth, when they apologized, when they finally saw what you had been trying so hard to prove. But now you know the truth. Peace does not come when the world changes. Peace comes when you stop asking the world for permission to be at peace, because that was the prison all along. The belief that your worth had to be confirmed from the outside. The belief that if enough people admired you, accepted you, loved you, then you would finally feel whole. But no amount of praise can heal a person who does not respect themselves. No amount of approval can free a person who is still waiting for someone else to decide that they matter. You have spent too much of your life standing before the court of other people's opinions. Too much of your life asking strangers to decide whether you are enough. too much of your life carrying words that were never true and wounds that were never yours. Now it is time to leave that court forever. You do not need permission to value yourself. You do not need permission to set boundaries. You do not need permission to walk away from what diminishes you. You do not need permission to stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You do not need permission to become who you are. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 12, Paragraph 4, that if you seek tranquility, do less, but do what is essential. What is essential is this: protect your mind, protect your character, protect the quiet certainty that your value does not depend on another person's inability to see it. The world may continue to be noisy. People may continue to speak carelessly. There will still be criticism, rejection, disrespect. But none of those things can disturb a person who no longer builds their identity on what can be taken away. Because when you know who you are, other people's opinions become information, not commandments. When you know your worth, rejection becomes redirection. When you know your principles, disrespect becomes a reflection of them, not of you. This is what it means to become untouchable. Not that nothing hurts you, not that you never feel pain. You are human. You will still feel disappointment, anger, sadness, but those feelings no longer rule you. They no longer convince you that you are broken. They no longer make you betray yourself. Because now there is something stronger inside you than the world outside you. Your will, your discipline, your clarity, your decision to remain loyal to yourself no matter what anyone says. That is freedom. Freedom is not getting everyone to respect you. Freedom is no longer needing them to. Epictetus said in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 4, Chapter 1, that the person who is free is the one who lives as they wish, who cannot be compelled, who cannot be hindered, whose desires and aversions are under their own control. Become that person. The next time someone disrespects you, do not ask, "How do I make them see my worth?" Ask, "Why am I forgetting it?" The next time someone rejects you, do not ask, "What do I need to change so they will choose me?" Ask, "Why am I asking someone else to choose what I should already know is valuable?" The next time the world makes you feel small, remember this: no one can make you feel inferior without your cooperation. No one can take your peace unless you hand it to them. No one can define your worth unless you forget it yourself. So stop waiting, stop begging, stop chasing, stand up, return to yourself. And from this day forward, let your life be guided by a single truth. You do not need the world's permission to know your own value.